All right, everyone, welcome back to the Bama Insider YouTube channel. I'm Andrew Bone, recruiting analyst for BamaInsider.com. Been a while since we've had a little fun on this webcast. Talk a little bit about recruiting. Kind of had a busy month with a lot of different things going on. I guess the main thing was getting married. So I'm married now, which is a big change. I was away from Bama Insider for it seemed like a few weeks, with my bachelor party, with the wedding, and then away on my honeymoon for a week. So stepped away. I think a lot of people, I don't know if people thought that I had just disappeared, but did get married, and extremely happy. But now I am back. We are going to kind of update everyone on what's going on with recruiting for Alabama Crimson Tide right now. Been kind of hectic with spring practice. Everything that goes on during the spring, it's kind of crazy because you have so many kids that are visiting schools. You got kids that are taking official visits. You got kids that are coming in for just one day. You got kids coming in for multiple days. Some that are there for spring practice. Some that may only can come in during their spring break. Maybe it's a Wednesday or a Thursday or something like that. Maybe it's a day that Alabama's not practicing. But for the most part, kids are there during practice. There's been a lot of kids there for scrimmages and stuff like that. And then there's going to be a ton of players on campus this weekend for A-Day. So regarding A-Day, we are going to have a ton of information on BamaInsider.com regarding all the top kids that are coming in for the weekend, official visitors, and just so much more. I mean, we'll have a ton of stuff now that we're kind of getting back into the swing of things. Now that I've been gone for I guess a couple of weeks. Now that I'm back, we'll kind of get back to our regular scheduled stuff on there. But today, what I want to talk about, just because we've been gone for so long, people don't know. All the latest news. What I want to talk about today is not really going back and talking about each and every single visitor. I want to talk about the top offensive players that are still left out there on Alabama's recruiting board, kind of how many guys they're recruiting at each position. Now, later on in the week, maybe on Thursday, we're going to jump back on. I'm going to talk about the top defensive players. Defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs. I'll go over each and every, no, not every one. I'm going to save some of that stuff for BamaInsider.com, on the message boards, but we'll go over some of the key targets for Alabama on the defensive side of the ball later on in the week. But today, I want to talk about the offensive side of the ball and what's all going on. So first off, we'll start at quarterback. Now, many people know Carson Beck, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, was originally a Florida baseball commitment until last summer. Attended Alabama's camp, earned an offer at Alabama's camp, and probably about a month later, reopened his recruitment. Well, I'd say reopened. He decommitted from Florida's baseball program and committed to Alabama's football program, and was a pretty solid commitment throughout most of the process, throughout the season. I think he only made it up to Tuscaloosa one time, just real busy with his football season, which he won a state championship. But after the season, after Alabama ended up losing its offense coordinator, its quarterbacks coach, Dan Enos leaving, I think that played a big part in him reopening his recruitment. Now, he still kept Alabama pretty high on his list. He had said that Miami, Florida, Alabama were his top three schools, and then he ended up taking a visit up to Georgia and committed to Georgia pretty much immediately on that trip. I think it was maybe even his first trip to Georgia. So kind of shocking for a lot of people. Obviously, Georgia's recruiting extremely well, but I don't think a lot of people expected him to jump on the Georgia commitment board that quick after that first trip to Athens. But I think Alabama's still kind of staying in touch with him. Maybe still be trying to get him in for another visit or two. But as of right now, I would not expect him to flip again. I mean, this would be his his fourth commitment over the course of his high school career if he did decommit from Georgia. So I don't typically see that. Now we've seen, obviously we see so many flips every single year. We've seen people flip two or three times, and I just don't see it happening again. Now, one quarterback that I am keeping an eye on, I think most Alabama fans are well aware of him, is Bryce Young out of California. He's committed to USC. I've been a USC fan for a long time, but I think with some coaching uncertainty there, with with the head coach, probably entering the season on the hot seat. He's got a really good relationship with Steve Sarkisian. Alabama was high on his list before he ended up committing to USC. I think Alabama's got a great shot there. I know a lot of people are already saying, oh, he's probably going to flip. I wouldn't say that just yet. Let him visit again. Let him spend time with the coaching staff. Let him kind of enjoy the process. I don't know if anything's going to be quick. I mean, I think that if he does it, he is going to visit Alabama soon. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to commit to Alabama or flip or reopen his recruitment. He could stick with USC and kind of see what happens this upcoming season, and see how they perform on the field before making, a final decision. So, but he's one that we're definitely keeping an eye on. Going to see, kind of how that shakes out over the course of the next few months. That's really. You think Alabama has like just this huge list of quarterback targets that they're going after. They're really not. A lot of the quarterbacks that they're recruiting are all committed to other programs. So, right now it's all about just trying to get these kids on campus, whether that's an official visit, an unofficial visit during the spring or summer. Just kind of get them familiar with the program, get them familiar with the coaching staff, get them familiar with the campus, and and how Alabama runs things. That's kind of the main thing right now for Alabama and for other schools as well. Is trying to get these kids on campus to spend time with the coaches and learn more about the overall program, and not just football but academics as well. So let's talk about running backs. Running back, I think Alabama's, got a good chance to sign a really, really good running back class this year. Right now they have Roydell Williams. Love Roydell Williams. I think he's an absolute stud. I think in my opinion, he's the best player in the state of Alabama. Him and Quandarius Robinson out of Jackson Olin High School, linebacker. And those are the top two players in the state of Alabama this year. I think Roydell, certainly an absolute stud. Reminds me so much of Josh Jacobs. Coming out of high school, I think he's got a chance to be a really spectacular player. What I like most about him is his ability to do more than one thing. He's not just a ball carrier. He can catch the ball. He can run routes. He can return kicks. He can do. Think of Josh Jacobs. Think of everything that he's able to do on the field. That reminds me so much of what Roydell Williams can do. Now, who else is Alabama going after? Now, there's a lot of big time running backs that are out there this year. You have Kendall Milton out of Fresno. You have Zachary Evans out of Houston. I mean, these are two big time running backs that are very high on Alabama's recruiting board who really like Alabama. Now, Kendall Milton will actually visit Alabama, here next week for an official visit. Big visit for him. So, getting him, he's visited once before, so this is going to be a second visit. I think it's huge for Alabama to get him on campus, kind of see everything again. Is Alabama in good shape with him? Yeah, it's hard to say because, we just hadn't talked a ton to him. He speaks highly of Alabama, but you really just have to get back on campus. And, once you kind of narrow things down and, make that decision, or when he gets a decision set up, we'll know a little bit more. But I think the biggest thing is just getting him on campus this weekend, as I mentioned, is a very important thing. We've seen some other guys that have visited campus this spring. We saw Sam Adams from Seattle visit with AJ Henning, Michael Drennan, two guys from the Midwest who visited Alabama. Chris Tyree, big time explosive back out of the Maryland area. Seen some great running backs. Now, the kid that I really like a lot, out of Louisiana, Kyle Edwards. He's going to visit for 8-day weekend. This is going to be his second or third trip to Tuscaloosa this year. He had I guess he didn't really have a ton of big stats last year because he played behind a five-star in John Emery at Destrehan High School. But this kid is a stud. I mean, he's 6 foot tall, about 205 pounds. I mean, he runs with power. Has that angry running style that you really look for in a running back, and certainly a running back that kind of fits the mold of an Alabama power back or an LSU back, somebody like that. I mean, he just runs like a freaking bull. So I think Alabama's definitely has their eyes on him a lot. I don't know if they would take a commitment just yet from him, just because hasn't had a ton of playing time on the field from playing behind John Emery last year. But I think he's got a chance to be a really spectacular player. Now, wide receiver wise, a lot of really good wide receivers in this year's recruiting class. I mean, probably one of the best wide receiver classes that we've seen in quite a while. Alabama's already off to a pretty good start at the receiver position. Trayshawn Holden out of Baltimore area, recent commitment. Alabama very high on him. Daz Worsham, who was an early in-state commitment out of Hewitt-Trussville, and then Javon Baker, who out of state of Georgia has been lighting it up at camps this spring. I think his stock's just continuing to rise. So that's 3 wide receiver commitments on Alabama's board already. Where are they going to go from there? There's some big time guys that have visited. There's some more guys that are coming in. Julian Fleming, 5-star wide receiver, is going to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend for an official visit. Still think Alabama's on the outside for him. Now, his high school quarterback last 2 seasons, Stone Hollenbach, is a walk-on quarterback for Alabama. Invited walk-on quarterback in this 2019 class. So he's going to be recruiting him. He's going to be here this weekend, so they're going to spend a lot of time together, and I'm sure Stone's going to be trying to recruit him to Tuscaloosa. But Julian Fleming going to make it in. I think as of right now, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, those are kind of considered the top 3 schools for him. Now, there's some other schools in the mix, but Alabama has a chance to really make a strong impression on him this weekend. New wide receivers coach Holman Wiggins will be, definitely spending a lot of time with him. We've seen some other guys that have visited this spring. Raheem Jarrett, another 5-star receiver from Washington, D.C. I think Alabama's still on the outside for him. He visited. I can't remember who all he visited with, but I know his parents did not make the trip. His mom's kind of a very important factor for him. I think she wants to visit, the schools with him that he's real high on, and as of right now, she hasn't visited Alabama, and so that may have been his last trip to Tuscaloosa. We'll see. Maybe he makes an official visit down the road. But the wide receiver that I would really keep an eye on is Thyle Jones-Bell, 4-star out of Miami. Been very high on Alabama. Alabama's very high on him. He visited, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, and a lot of people thought he was going to commit during that visit. Did not commit, decided to hold off, but I definitely think Alabama's in the driver's seat for him. Who are some other receivers that are high on Alabama? One other kid that I don't want to go away and not mention is Jermaine Burton, 4-star receiver out of California, originally from Georgia. Going to visit Alabama. I think it's going to be in June. If I'm not mistaken, but he's definitely a big time target for the Crimson Tide. They like him a lot, and he's certainly a kid that you never know what may happen. I mean, with him being originally from the Southeast, he could end up playing in the SEC. But so keep an eye on Jermaine Burton. We'll jump over to a tight end. Alabama already has a tight end commitment in Caden Clark out of Akron, Ohio. Tight end, very important position for Alabama this year. Can they land one of these big 5-star receivers like Eric Gilbert or out of Georgia, out of Marietta High School in Georgia, or Darnell Washington, the big 6'7", 230-pound tight end out of Las Vegas? I mean, those are 2 absolute studs that have very high interest in Alabama. Gilbert's already visited Tuscaloosa this spring. Washington's supposed to visit, I think, in the next few weeks. So, those are definitely 2 guys that they love a lot. Jonathan Odom out of Tampa recently visited Tuscaloosa. Now, there's one other kid, Michael Meyer, who's out of Kentucky. Is committed to Notre Dame, but definitely has a lot of interest in Alabama. Kind of keep an eye on him. He may end up visiting Tuscaloosa again. But those are really kind of some of the top tight end targets that are on Alabama's recruiting board. I think they want to sign at least 2 tight ends in this year's class, and they already have one in Caden Clark, but obviously kid like Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert, 2 very elite players on Alabama's recruiting board. All right, we're going to jump over to the offensive line. This is going to be kind of the last position that we talk about today. Like I said, I'll jump back on probably on Thursday. We'll go over some of the key defensive players for Alabama in this 20 recruiting class. Now, we've seen some top kids visit Alabama this spring. We saw Paris Johnson, the #1 offensive tackle in the country, who's committed to Ohio State. And, I just don't see him flipping from Ohio State. I think he had a great visit to Alabama, but I think it's going to take a lot for him to flip his commitment. Now, Tate Ratledge out of Georgia, Justin Rogers out of Michigan. Those are 2 other elite players that we've seen name Alabama as a school with high interest. I think with Justin Rogers, Alabama really needs to get him back on campus and just spend some time with him. Tate Ratledge had Alabama #1 on his list for a very long time, but I think that kind of slipped away when Brent Key ended up leaving and going to Georgia Tech. I think Georgia's in the driver's seat for him at this time. Some other guys that we've seen, visit Alabama throughout the last few months. Xavier Hill out of Olive Branch High School. I think Alabama's extremely high on him. They love him a lot. Jonah Monheim out of California also recently visited. Andrew Gentry out of Colorado. Marcus Dummerville out of Fort Lauderdale. At St. Thomas Aquinas, Alabama signed a few St. Thomas Aquinas kids in last year's recruiting class. So I think that definitely helps with Marcus. So a lot of these kids aren't going to be announcing anytime soon. They're taking their time with their recruiting process. Now, Alabama did just recently get a commitment from Seth McLaughlin. Definitely a very good center prospect from the state of Georgia. Can't play anywhere on the interior. I think he could be a guard, but as of right now, probably think he's more of a center than a guard. Those are some of the top offensive line targets for Alabama in this class. I think they want to sign maybe, it's in between 3 and 4. They're not going to sign 5 offensive linemen, in my opinion, this year. It's probably going to be 3 or 4 guys, 4 at the max. That's kind of the number that I've been hearing for a while. So keep an eye on those guys. All right, we've kind of gone through all the positions on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go through maybe a few questions as it pertains to offensive players. I know we got some defensive questions out there, but guys, save it. I'm gonna come back and answer those questions on Thursday. Let's see. Is there a Julio type wide receiver out there? It's tough to say. It's not like a Julio Jones or an AJ Green, comes along, every year. I mean, Justin Ross, Clemson, coming out of Central High School in Phoenix City. I knew he was an elite athlete. I just didn't know he was going to make that big of an impact as a true freshman. Of course, he's got a great quarterback, great offensive system that he runs in as well. But man, I definitely think that he's got a chance to be a real good, even better college player over the course of the next few years. In terms of currently in high school, I mean, there's some studs out there. Rakeem Jarrett, Julian Fleming, Jermaine Burton. Those are some of the top guys in high school right now. EJ Williams, also out of Central Phoenix City. One kid I really like a lot is J.J. Evans out of Montevallo. He's committed to Auburn. I think he's got a chance to see his stock soar throughout the spring, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Javon Baker's having a heck of a spring so far. But it's hard to find a guy like Julio Jones or AJ Green or somebody like that. All right, let's see here. Anything on another quarterback? Well, as I mentioned, Bryce Young out of California, certainly a guy that they're extremely high on. And I said earlier, there's some other kids that are committed elsewhere that they like a lot. I just haven't heard of a ton of other names in terms of, all right, they're going to offer this kid that's not committed anywhere, doesn't have a ton of offers. I think they're kind of waiting to see what happens with Bryce Young before making any other moves at this time. They'll bring in some quarterbacks this summer for camp and kind of go from there. Let's see. All right. I think that's probably going to be all for. Can Sark get DJ out here at John Bosco, the number one quarterback in the country? I don't think so. I think that maybe he visits. Yeah, I think he has Alabama in his top six, top 10, whatever it is. I think he's going to Clemson. I would be shocked if he doesn't go to Clemson. I think that's kind of the what everyone assumes is going to happen. I think Alabama's probably a long shot for him. Um, all right. Well, I think that's probably it for today, guys. I just wanted to kind of catch up. Like I said, I haven't been around over the course of the last few weeks for a reason. I want you guys to kind of get caught up on everything. But come to BamaInsider.com. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe today. We got a ton of stuff going on. Tony and Kyle do a tremendous job covering the team. And if you guys haven't noticed yet on BamaInsider.com, Mike Johnson, former All-American offensive lineman, has been a big contributor on Bama Insider this spring for us. Has been breaking down position groups. Has been talking about the overall team. He's been going to practices, so he's been able to give us some great scoop on there. So subscribe to Bama Insider, get all that good information, and also all my recruiting stuff on the Recruiting Insider board. That's all for today. I will be back Tuesday to kind of go over the top defensive guys. But if you want to talk about the top defensive guys today, come to Bama Insider. I'll take your questions on Bama Insider today. But overall, that is it. And thank you all for subscribing today. See you next time.